Happy Filipino American History Month to all. This is Manny Ramos, your host of Rise Up, Real Issues and Stories of Every One of Us podcast. Joining us today on Rise Up is Potri Ranka Manis. But first, let me talk about who we are. I'm Manny Ramos, a board member of the Philippine Nurses Association of America, a past president of the Philippine Nurses Association of Central Florida. I'm a professor of nursing at Valencia College here in Orlando and an adjunct faculty at William Patterson University. With me today is my co-host, Mindy Ofiana. Mindy?
Hello, partner.
Hey.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Mindy Ofiana, Legislative Committee Chair for PNAA, Corresponding Secretary for PNAA Foundation, and past President for PNAA Southern California. Before my recent retirement, I served as both a Chief Operating Officer and a Chief Nursing Officer at one of the medical centers owned by KPC Group of Companies.
This publication was made possible by Cooperative Agreement CDC RFA IP 21-2106 from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Its contents are solely the responsibility of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of CDC HHS. Our guest on this episode is Potri Ranka Manis. She's a public health nurse consultant at the New York City Department of Health Bureau of Environmental Diseases and Injury Prevention. Potri is also a playwright, poet, actor, producer, choreographer, and practitioner of the theater of the oppressed. Born and raised in Mindanao, the southern Philippines, she's the daughter of the late Sultan Agaos of the Royal House of Borocot, a tradition bearer of the Maranao people. Potri is the founder and artistic director of Kinding Sindao, a resident company of the La Mama Experimental Theater Company in New York City. Potri, how are you?
Kumusta? Good evening and good afternoon somewhere else.
Good evening.
And I will greet the Muslim way. Salamu alaikum. Magandang gabi.
So, Potri, you are the founder and artistic director of Kinding Sindao. Please tell us more about
Kinding
it.
means graceful movement. And Sindao means to spark. And I saw on the PNA, your team is spark. Be a spark. I said,
Yes.
I fit in. So Sindao is where the word Cindy came from, Cindy, to light. So I came here in America. I was recruited to become H1A visa. So in 1990. And of course, we were the soldiers facing the upsurge of the pandemic called HIV/AIDS. And like 99% nurses are Filipinos, particularly during the nights. So I was a night nurse. Before that, I was in Saudi Arabia. And before that, of course, I was in the Philippines. It hurts me to leave our country, but I was paid 8 pesos an hour. Contractual, no work, no pay.
Yeah.
And also, every time I have a
Right.
production, I have to resign instead of taking a leave or instead of working together, the artistic. And also, that was the height of martial law. And those are painful years. In fact, I became a political prisoner when I was young. So I finished my nursing, going to school with guard. I was a controversial activist, political prisoner because I was allowed to go to school and then with guard. And then I asked the commanding officer, sir, bigyan mo ko ng guwapo, matangkad, full pack. Sabi, ang bait niya, si Captain Fernandez. He's one of my heroes. Because he allowed me to go to school. Sabi niya, bata ka, what will be your future? Sabi ko, gusto ko maging nurse. He said, I'm the president of United Church of Christ, Brokenshire College. Kaya he put me in his custody. I was still a prisoner. I have to report every Friday. But he is so compassionate. And, that's one of the, and I said, this is one of my heroes.
So, Potri, you arrived in New York in 1990. So, how was that different from your experiences in Saudi Arabia and Dubai? I remember you mentioned something about that time in 1990. It was the height of the HIV pandemic. So, how was New York City and how was Potri in it?
Well, as an artist, actually, I'm so excited. New York, I'm here.
Yeah.
And and then the so-called culture shock. Kaya ko to. The thing with New York is it's so diverse that you can be Filipino in in your hospital because the hospital was Cabrini Medical Center. It's gone, but it's 93% Filipino. So and then different ano pa dialects, may Bisaya, may Tagalog, may Ilocano. So I speak all those tongue because growing in Mindanao, in the diverse community, you learned it as a child. But I, yeah. So yun. And then nakita ko na we have all the possibilities as an artist.
Well, pottery, I know that the national convention, the PNAA national convention, will be in New York next year. And I want to see you sing, say poetry, and dance at Kinding Sindao for sure. So I'll make sure I'll go there and visit your shows. Oh, yes. So, Potri, we invited you for this episode of Rise Up where we will be talking about human rights and civil protections. We are aware of the increasing frequency of anti Asian incidents in the United States. The Stop Asian American Pacific Islander Hate Coalition received over 9,000 reports of hate incidents from the period of March 2020, and that was the time at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, to June of this year. And the type of discrimination range from verbal harassment, deliberate avoidance of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, physical assault. They were being cuffed at or spat on. There were civil rights violations and online harassment.
So, Potri, recently you experienced a traumatic incident, and I'm very sorry about that. Would you please share what happened?
We just have to take a deep breath a bit because you see yesterday I did a lot, right? I did teach the dance. I've been arranging so many other events for Philippine American month. And then the last event I had is to teach Rigodon to Ihus de Davao. All those. And then after that, when I went away to buy food, I was telling my husband, nalulungkot ako. I am feeling sad. And I said, it's not even sad because this is my first time to feel it. Like this comes in every now and then. Like I feel some coldness inside of me, like an ice that hits, and I know it's somewhere else, and I'm trying to trace where it comes from because I'm a happy person. I make people happy all the time, and then in fact, you will know if I am stressed because you will always hear me. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine, to keep me up. But last night I observed that I feel that somewhere, but last night I really like listened to it. So I think I was telling myself, I think this is the question in the PHQ-9. Like, have you feel, did you feel sad in the last 2 weeks, di ba? I said, I think, so
Mhm.
pini-PHQ-9 ko ng sarili ko. I said, oh, I think this is what they're asking the patient. So now I think that's part of that assault because even though I have undergone some other trauma, this one is something that you're giving mask. And I have been giving mask from the beginning of COVID. I partner with other organizations like National Alliance for Filipino Concern, especially here in Queens. I'm in the epicenter of the epicenter. And being in the front line, you're very concerned what will happen to your neighbor. And also you can see all those, and we call it urban dwellers, the people who choose to be homeless because there's actually a house for them, but choose not to be living in the street. So it became a habit that I give mask. It's always in my bag. And so that's it. In my way home from work, because we started 3 days a week to work, to face-to-face work. Otherwise, I became an epidemiologist. During COVID time, we follow up the where is the clusters and the height of the counts of COVID. And then usually I give masks to people and they're happy. Free mask, that's $1 or 25 cents. And then I always say it in a graceful way that so we will not let COVID go to 2025. It might be an exaggeration, but it can be a reality. But, you know, so I was telling this couple, they entered um, with a child and then they sat on my side. Oh my. And then I was giving a mask. I have a mask. I always have a shopping bag because, there's no more plastics when you go shopping. So, I always have shopping bag in case you're gonna go buy something. But the masks are there. I said, I have a mask. You can have it for free. So we can use it and it will not go to 2025. And immediately the man took the mask and said, mind your own business, chink. Twice. Mind your own business, chink. Mind your own business, chink. And he threw it away and he's about to grab my bag. And I was thinking because maybe he thinks I have more masks there. But then there was a man who pulled his back and he was not able to reach me. So the woman stood up and started beating me up on my head. And I'm trying to hide my face because I said I have a show coming Saturday. Don't hit my face. But then, and then at the same time, I was looking at her knees. I said, if I'll kick her knee, I'm gonna break it easy because I was sitting down and she's a heavy set. And then I saw the child and I turned to the left side. I saw the child looking at her mom committing that violence. So she hit my face. So black and blue ito. And then when the train stopped, I took my phone to call 911, but they pulled my phone. And it hurt my and this part kasi there's a ring, when there's a ring in the phone. So I ran after, and no, the woman, while she's beating me up, she keeps on saying, "You chink, mind your own business. Get home to China, your dirty country. Get out of this train, you terrorists." So those are all hate languages.
Mm.
Then anyway, I ran after them because of the phone. At the same time, I was calling the police. The police didn't even mind. And then when when before I left, I pressed the emergency button of the subway. So when I went up, there are already police there. And these people, I can still see their back, but the police did not run after them. Maybe the way I understand the police think I was just a crazy woman. And they did not take my statement. They took the statement of that person. He's a white Caucasian male, tall, who said that I saw everything. It was just an argument about the mask. So it was dismissive. Plus the word, it's an argument
Right.
about the mask. That's a public health issue. So up to now, there's no police report. The There was a policewoman who helped me get a detective. Brought the detective to Bellevue. That's where I had my emergency examination as a victim. And so the detective that took my statement while I was there was in the robbery crime department. So for that situation, it's treated as robbery when it's not robbery at all. And if you, yeah,
So, so Potri, you started to share how this traumatic event affected you. How are you now?
you see, during the start of COVID, we created this "I love you very" mask. Then we will continue that as a movement. I love you very much. I mean, I am. I will ask PNA to adopt that. So that's the overarching mission of Kinding Sindao right now. We are a cultural group, but the I love you very much will become part of that cultural group, and every nurse. And that's my way of responding to this pain. I mean, we cannot. I don't believe that those couples, those couple will be arrested. I know their photos came out, but I will just use this trauma to become strong and make other people stronger, especially those who had been a victim of hate crime and did not have a chance or did not have the eloquence or not able to navigate the system to express what happened to them, because it's still happening. And even recently, there's Maria, um what's her name, Maria, we will remember later her family. She was knocked down in the at the Times Square and she died. And it's only taken that
Mhm.
there was a deranged person who did it. But I mean, if we can influence the policy maker or the president to define, like, do not when if you assault the bus driver, you'll be penalized this much. So if you assault a healthcare worker, you have to pay 10 million. If you assault an Asian, you have to pay 20 million. Something like that. So before people, I mean, there will be assault still, but before they will assault, they were first think, where will I get my 10 million? You know, I'm just giving an example, but if this will be promulgated by not only New York State, but the federal, the government, the president of USA, he has to say that any assault Asian, any assault on healthcare worker, and of course Muslim, that there's a separate law with that, no, because there's so much assault ready for Islamophobia. But to make use of Asians, now I would say make use of Filipino as scapegoat of your anger that is coming from where somewhere, right? You know, everybody has mental issues, but it is not what you call this, it cannot be an excuse to assault somebody. We're not dogs you kick. You're not cats that the dog has to run. Or we're not, I mean, we are human. One. Number two, please, we're frontliners. We compose a population that if it's not because of us, then you may have been dead. It's so that's the pain that comes every now and then to our mind, particularly. I mean, while being assaulted, my mind is still a nurse. My mind is still mothering the baby that they're carrying. In my mind, they're like, oh my God, this is another case. It's a child abuse. And then later on, while I'm in the hospital, I'm trying to analyze my situation. I'm even still on the side of the assailant, like, oh, maybe they're angry couple. Maybe they grew up with a family that's abusive. That's why abuse to them is normal. And I'm sure that kid will grow up abuser. That is still what is in my mind when I'm lying down in the emergency room. And that's the painful part. Like right now, I feel like crying. It is unguarded. I mean, I can rationalize this again and again, but I have to acknowledge that there's that um there's that coldness in me that says, um, what's the use of everything, you know? So I'm watching that because if I'm feeling that, what more will happen to a person that has been assaulted, who's not a nurse, who's not aware of how to watch your PHQ-9? So, and then about abuse, personally, I've been abused. I've been told so many times, go home to your country. And I think all the Filipino nurses said, "Ganda, go home to your country. Or I've been paying you what, I even have a patient who said to me, I want a white nurse. Get out of my room. So I said, okay, I will look for a white nurse. I was taking, what do you call this? It's the patient as an admission. Sorry, I'm crying. Patient as an admission. So I was taking his information, and he doesn't want me. He wants a white nurse. There's no white nurse during the nighttime. I have to come back. Actually, I left and read his chart. He's a Vietnam veteran who was amputated, below knee amputee, and I think it's because of his service in Vietnam. So maybe he's looking at me as a Viet Cong or something. But anyhow, those are the those are the abuses that we are facing. Those are the racists. Every time I walk now, I'm afraid that people I will pass by, I'll get assaulted. Like for me, the faces of those two people who assaulted me is replicated to everyone that I pass by. So I'm trying to guard myself that please, they are not the and I went to a mall to get my new phone, and then while waiting for all this downloading, uploading, I was in the cafeteria of the mall, at the food center, and some guys just pass by, look at me. It's not even me, maybe they're looking at. Or maybe they're really looking at me because I was like 2 days on television, repeated, with Senator Schumer, Senator Lu. So maybe they're looking at, I said, are they looking at me? Is this man an assailant? And I'm so bad because I took their photos anyway. I took their photos. So that produces, you know, uh, that kind of trauma is still there. I know how much longer it will linger because I don't want to go to the subway anymore. But after that assault, I'm just so worried about everyone now taking the subway. In matters of outlook, I'm in Korean drama fighting, you know. I do not surrender. Hindi ako sumusuko. That's why the immediate work right now that we're doing is I love you very mask. I asked the mayor's office for masks. They gave me 6,000 masks, which is KN95. So I called all the organizations that, okay, go at let's do this. I love you very mask. Okay, so natuwa ang mga mosque na pinadalhan ko and other organization, Foundation for Filipino Artists, International Women's Association, mga ganon, to encourage the project. I love you very much. So I'm encouraging everyone because I think besides being, of course, we know all this. Before we wear masks because we're not vaccinated with influenza. This time, I think I will wear masks forever. I will design beautiful masks because I think it's still the best way of preventing respiratory diseases. And so those are my resolve. And as a minority, I do not accept that I'm a minority. We are not minority. We have achieved so much as Filipinos in this country. And our relationship to USA goes back in 1898 when Puerto Rico, Cuba, Hawaii, and Guam and Philippines were sold to USA under the Treaty of Paris. After that, the Filipino-American relationship started violently. We have a violent start with that relations. So USA has to acknowledge us not as a minority, but as a people of color and people of power, that we still are the backbone of this country, together with other people of color. Whether we like it or not, we really became part of this history. And we cannot be abused the way we are being abused. And we Filipinos really have to influence policy and really study how we're going to stand these abuses, because we've been abused for 500 years by the Spaniards. That colonial mentality went through generation that we allow that abuses to sink in and say, kasi siguro yun ang gusto ng Diyos. You know? But we really have to see that resilience and also stand up that we are people, we're humans, and our value has to be taken with that value, no? And there is a book called Wretched of the Earth by Franz Fanon. I think every Filipino should read that so that we will see uh, how we gonna make ourselves strong by realizing our own biases as Filipinos. And then when we realize our own biases, we're able to unite with other Filipinos and make an organized move. So the organized move will make us big. Just like small fish in a school will drive away a big fish that are about to eat them. Have you seen that? Have you seen that caricature? So the reason why other Asians are kind of not being attacked because they're solid. Don't do that. They have an organization. You know, we internalize our oppression and we divert it or express it in other ways that would even hurt our own fellow Filipinos. So if we read this book, that can be a guide to analyze ourselves as a people and to see which part of us is the colonizer and the colonized, because that's the nature of the colonial mentality. That if we I mean, in that train, I believe there was a Filipino. I'm sure, but nobody stood up or just holler, stop that, There's none. We have those holler training, but I was already asking for help. And I'm sure there are Asians in the train. But everybody's afraid to help. And it's not only me. There are two cases like Quinto. Noel, his face was last. Nobody helped him. And then, what is her name again? That lady that was kicked in the street. Forgot her name. Virgie. The doorman closed the door on her. So there's no good Samaritan. No, and I don't know if everyone still remember the Good Samaritan, because in Islam we have Good Samaritan. In Christianity you have Good Samaritan. In Judaism we have Good Samaritan. This is Old Testament.
We have time for one last question. What would be your message to the Filipinos, the other Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders regarding hate in the United States?
The word hate will make us sick. We don't, the word, where did I find this? Illness is I-L-L, and N-E-S-S, illness. But wellness is we, you and I, we, W-E-L-L-N-E-S. So we have to develop the we. The only way to happiness is when we connect with each other. And the only way to connect with each other is to understand our own history as Filipinos. Let's understand our history. Let's not adopt the amnesia style, because we cannot be Caucasians. We cannot be another nationality. We're Filipinos. Let's embrace our history, study whatever pain, negative, and trauma. Our Philippine history is a very traumatic history, But because we are so island people, we're so happy people, and we call ourselves resilient. Actually, the so-called resilient is not resilient. We cover up a lot. We smile a lot. We have this smiling depression. We even have the colonial mentality depression as defined by Dr. Kevin Nadal. We cover ourselves with all the brand names. We go to the outlet and with all the colonial mentality depression, we buy all this, send it to our people back home. We show off that wearing all this brand, but that is not the solution of the wellness. The illness is still there. You just cover it up. We Filipinos have to understand our history and our history why we are here in USA, our participation in the community, and our participation as an organized people. And then we have to restudy the chismis part of who we are because we cannot live that way. That chismis part of the Filipinos is part of the internalized oppression because we swallow whatever we don't like from our master or whatever nakikisama lang tayo, yung pala masama ang loob natin, we go say yes, but the thing is, there's something inside you that doesn't agree, and then you go home and you talk bad about that person whose presentation was given out because you didn't say about what you want in that particular presentation. So learn how to express, learn how to articulate what you want, what you don't want. Don't be afraid to be a disruptor because that is part of change.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Potri Ranka Manis. Be present, be heard. Learn how to express and tell your story. Thank you very much. It's been a joy and a wonderful time that was spent with you, Potri. Thank you so much. And that is all that we have for this episode of Rise Up. I want to thank our guests, Potri Ranka Manis, and my co-host, Mindy Ofiana, our director and producer, Rodney Cajudo, Carol Robles, PNAA Chair for Communications and Marketing, our advisor, PNAA Foundation President Nancy Hoff, our executive producers, PNAA President Dr. Mary Joy Garcia-Dia, and our PNAA Executive Director, Carmina Bautista. Join us every Wednesday here on Rise Up. Until then, keep on rising. See you next week.